Welcome to Bonus Issues. This is the time where we get to talk a little bit more in depth on the web. We're in a podcast form. We're everywhere. And we got a great panel, our debut panel. Dan Schnur is here. He's a professor at USC and UC Berkeley, and he's done about 8,000 jobs in politics over the years. Areva Martin is here as well. She's a political commentator and author, and the author of Make It Rain, which I think we have a full screen of that we want to show everybody. And we also have got Joel Pollak, who's the author of How Trump Won. And let's show everybody Areva's book then. There it is, right there, Make It Rain, looking good. Sorry I don't have Joel's book here. But look it up, it's a great buy on Amazon. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the governor's race. We had Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom here. What did you make of him, Areva?
Well, I thought he did a good job. One of the comments that he made that stuck with me is the comment about education. You asked him a question about education, and specifically as it related to charter schools. And there's been a lot of talk from all of the candidates about charter schools. And I want to see more talk about public schools, because the reality is minority kids, poor kids, most of them are going to end up getting their education in public schools. So what are we doing to shore up public schools? And that's a big issue. And you know, we have a new superintendent for Los Angeles Unified School District, Austin Butner, controversial superintendent, and a lot of people are concerned about what happens. I know Austin personally. I think he's a great guy. He doesn't come from an educational background. He does have a kid with special needs, which for me as a parent of a special needs kid, I want to see what's going to happen with our public schools, particularly for African American, Latino, minority kids, kids with special needs, and I want to see all of the candidates talk more about how we improve educational outcomes for marginalized students.
Joel, Antonio Villaraigosa is being supported by the Charter School Association. They got an $8.5 million cash infusion. Reed Hastings giving $7 million. Eli Broad giving $1.5 million. What do you think they want for that money? How does that impact the race?
I think they want to shake things up. I think that's why you've seen significant money come into other races. 4 years ago, we had the race for school superintendent in California that was very close, very contested because of outside money coming in. We had it here in the LA school district, and people want alternatives. I mean, charter schools are public schools, but they operate differently, and people are thirsty for that alternative because the normal public schools in many places are failing those minority kids, and it's minority parents actually who are the grassroots support for a lot of charter school initiatives.
As for the race as a whole, we see Gavin Newsom leading the pack, and then there's this race for second between Antonio Villaraigosa, John Chung, Travis Allen, and John Cox, who are all sort of within the margin of error, depending on the poll. Where do you see this going?
Well, it's impossible to predict a few weeks out who is going to finish second in a field that's so closely packed together. But to me, the most important variable in this race, Alex, particularly as it relates to Villaraigosa, is turnout among Latino and Latina voters. And not to put too fine a point on it, if the Hispanic American community turns out at levels that are normally associated with presidential elections, Villaraigosa is not only in the runoff, but it's a very good chance of being the next governor. If, on the other hand, the Hispanic American community turns out at levels more normally, traditionally associated, lower levels, with midterm elections, then he's in a much more difficult position. So the two questions to ask are, number one, can Villaraigosa convince Latinos and Latinas to vote in larger numbers than they normally would? And if Antonio Villaraigosa cannot inspire that kind of turnout, can Donald Trump?
Yeah. Joel, what do you think?
I think it's fascinating now that for 2 successive elections, we've seen an attempt to get the Latino vote engaged and also the vote in Los Angeles to challenge the dominance of San Francisco Bay Area politicians. The fact is that people in the San Francisco Bay Area just vote more often and in greater numbers than in Los Angeles, where we have very low turnouts. You would think going into this race with Villaraigosa running and Kevin De Leon running on the Senate side that you'd have a huge push for Latino voters to come out and voters across Southern California. These are hometown candidates. But just as in the Senate race with Kamala Harris and Loretta Sanchez, it was really fascinating to see how the LA contingent just didn't show up.
Yeah.
So is that going to change this year? We're not seeing it yet.
It's going to change because they're all going to watch The Issue Is, and they're going to be informed.
But if they do, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You asked Gavin Newsom about sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
And what Joel alluded to, if I understood your point correctly, is that that is an issue on which many Republican and many conservative voters have such strong feelings. It could motivate a significant increase in turnout. The question is, can it also motivate a turnout among supporters of sanctuary cities. Gavin Newsom knows that these are voters with whom Vida Ragos has a natural advantage.
Right.
I think that's why he was so quick to emphasize the issue in his conversation with you.
Yeah, the resistance to the resistance. Could that be even stronger than what we see? All right, let's talk about another big issue this week, North Korea. It seems like the president making some progress there. Does the president deserve credit, and does the president deserve a Nobel Prize?
Yeah, I don't know about a Nobel Prize. He definitely deserves credit, you know, for all of the antics and all of the drama around the presidency. And we were talking about that. If we stripped away the Twitter feed, if we stripped away the lawsuits involving, you know, adult film stars and, you know, all of the things that have shackled this president, you know, would his approval ratings be higher? Would we be applauding him in a different way than we are? And I think this North Korea, or the possibility of some kind of peace negotiation with North Korea, gives us an opportunity to perhaps see Donald Trump in a different light. Now, it remains to be seen because, like everything that this president does, there's a lot of announcements, a lot of pronouncements, and not always the follow-up and the action. So I think it's a jury is still out, as lawyers like to say.
Yeah, to another lawyer.
I think the Twitter and the controversy and the unpredictability of Donald Trump is partly what led to this moment. You know, he was making tweets or statements like fire and fury and my button is bigger than your button, and some of that was a real commitment to a military option, but some of it was also funny. And I think that Kim Jong-un got the joke, and I think he realized there was a human connection there that he might have with Donald Trump. In the tweet where Donald Trump infamously called him short and fat, he also said, maybe we can be friends someday.
Well, Kim Jong-un, known for a sense of humor.
Yeah, when he tells a joke, you better laugh.
Yeah.
Severe consequences if you don't.
So as the non-lawyer on the panel, the non-author too, I think I need to write a book.
It's time, Dan.
Okay.
We accept you into the club.
You're way
Dan.
behind.
That's really, thank you. Donald Trump, right now, deserves a fraction of a Nobel Peace Prize because we are still in the very early stages of this discussion. Look, the point is absolutely right.
Yeah.
Trump, no lie, in a very unconventional way, provoked the North Koreans into engaging in a way that they had not in many years.
Sure.
The question is, now that they're at the table, can he close a deal that the last several U.S. presidents cannot? If he can do that in a verifiable way, then that deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, but that's the much harder end of the bargain.
And he'll need the president of China to help with that as well, as the head of South Korea. All right, well, we're 900 days away from the election in 2020, so it's time to talk about it, right? We got a new poll out today, and it showed, it was New Hampshire Democrats, it showed that Elizabeth Warren was the front runner, ahead of Joe Biden and ahead of Bernie Sanders. There's the results right there. Clearly, polls the day before the presidential election were wrong, so let's look at the 900 days out. But with that being said, what do you make of the fight for 2020 on the Democratic side? We could have like 25 candidates, right?
Yeah, people forget that in the early stages of the 2016 presidential campaign, there were 17 Republican candidates. And so I think you're exactly right, Alex. You could very easily see 20-something, if not 30-something, Democratic candidates in the early stages of this race. Right now, it's primarily a contest for name recognition, but the one thing I'd add, and would defer to both of the others on the panel on this, is very clear that whoever the identity of the nominee is, the energy in the Democratic Party is with its base. And the most populist voices are those in control of the discussion right now.
I'm excited when I saw that poll because, one, it says, you know, we may be headed towards having a female nominee for the party for the second time, as we did, you know, in 2016, and the number of African American candidates, potential presidential candidates, has quadrupled at least. And so to think about this crowded field and how many women and how many African American and potentially Latino candidates is really exciting, I think, for the Democratic Party.
And we also could have Eric Garcetti in that field. He's heading out there. Joel, what do you make of Eric Garcetti, the presidential candidate?
We've got him, we've got Kamala Harris, we've got a lot of California candidates who need to start spending more time in New Hampshire, I think, judging on that poll. I think Garcetti presents an alternative for a couple of reasons. He's got some weaknesses too, but the alternative he presents is he's an executive, he's got governing experience, he's not just showing up to vote. He also is on the more moderate side of the Democratic Party, although he's in touch with the left on cultural issues. So he bridges all that. The weak spot has to do with homelessness in Los Angeles, which isn't only his problem. It's a problem all across the nation. But that was something he made a top priority, and we're still waiting to see the improvement there.
Yeah, and the challenge, of course, would be those ads with Skid Row
and
homelessness.
To Dan's point about the base, I think it remains to be seen if a moderate like Eric Garcetti can make, to the top of the heap in a primary where the base is, going to be so far to the left.
Yeah. Okay, let's do a new segment that we have called The Personal Issue. We did it with like a 30-second thing, but I'm just going to shuffle these cards. I'm going to give each of you one. I haven't even looked at it. And you can give us an answer, and we'll learn something about you. Look at that throw. So what do you think? Read out the question, and tell us what it says.
I was going to say, don't I get to do favorite superhero like Gavin Newsom?
Well, what's your question?
Well, my favorite superhero is Hawkeye the Marksman, and I'm seeing Avengers this weekend, so don't tell me if he survives or not.
Okay,
please.
what's your question?
Favorite athlete?
Who is that?
Oh my gosh, my favorite athlete is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, nice, Dancing with the Stars.
Well, some of us are old enough to remember remember him when he played basketball.
Okay, there's that too. Okay. All right.
Okay. Favorite sports team, but I'm going to interpret this a little differently. I'm going to take a little liberty and license with it.
Like a good lawyer.
I'm going to say Venus and Serena Williams.
Okay, that's a team. They played doubles a lot of times together. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I got the question that Gavin Newsom wouldn't answer, which is favorite TV show.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are watching Last Man on Earth, which I don't know if you've seen it. It's just hilarious. It's literally about a guy who's the last person on Earth, and then he discovers there's one woman left, so they decide to get together, and then all of a sudden he realizes there's another woman.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic comedy about dynamics in a relationship. So,
interesting. And of course, the new favorite show is The Issue Is. So let's go around the table real quick. The next issue is, what is the next big issue of the week ahead?
Ironically enough, the other panelists have already covered it, Alex. The next big issue is education. And if I can just say quickly to weigh in on the points that they made, I am a big charter school supporter. And I'm a big charter school supporter not for white wealthy kids, because the kids in Brentwood don't need charter schools, but those who come from the most challenged communities are the ones who benefit from educational choice. If you end up with the Vita Ragosa versus Newsom governor's race, that issue explodes.
It explodes. Areva,
I
big
think
issue.
the next big issue is this poll that's going to come out on African-American voters in the state of California. So we saw the press conference with Vita Ragosa. We heard Gavin Newsom talking about his support amongst African-American voters, but a poll is being conducted as we speak that will come out in the next week or 10 days or so, a deep dive into the voting patterns of African-Americans in the state of California, and we'll know which of the candidates for governor really have the support of the black community in California.
And Joel?
In the next 10 days, you're going to see attention shift back to the Middle East because the United States is moving our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I'm actually going to be there for that, along with many American members of Congress and members of the administration. It's a very big event, a big moment in history, and it's going to be what people are talking about over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you guys very much. Let's put those books up just to remind everybody. So we got Areva's book right there, Make It Rain, and we've got Joel's book as well, How Trump Won. And the next time Dan Schnur is here, he's going to have a book.
Maybe the time after that.
Maybe a lot of
Thank you guys for being part of our first show. This was fun, right?
This is a lot of
fun.
fun.
Great time. You guys are all awesome, and it's so fun to be here. And thank you so much for joining us for The Issue Is. Again, next week, we're going to have a special conversation about race with John Lewis and Karen Bass. We're going to have Republican gubernatorial candidate John Cox is going to be here, plus we have a special panel with Seema Mehta of the LA Times, Howard Bragman, the publicist, and Tim Conway Jr. of KFI. Ding dong. Have a great week. We'll see you then.